So, very warm welcome to the podcast today, and I'm delighted to be joined by the amazing Sam Howell as my guest on the podcast today. And Sam and I are going to be talking about the power of coaching, which is very exciting. It's a very important topic for me as well. Surprise, surprise. So, warm welcome to the podcast, Sam. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for inviting me, Gemma, and it's lovely to be here talking to you and talking about such a great topic that we're both passionate about.
Amazing. And for those who are watching the YouTube, we have Sam has an amazing grandfather clock behind her on the video. So you will get that as a special treat today. I've already said how beautiful that is. So lovely background there. So Sam, just to introduce you, Sam, and then you can add anything that you'd like to add on to that. So Sam is an accredited coach who works with individuals, leaders, and teams to support their growth and development. She's passionate about coaching and is motivated by her purpose in life, which is to help others flourish through the power of coaching, which is an amazing purpose. I love that purpose, Sam. So very warm welcome. And I'd love to hear more about that purpose. So over to you to build on that.
Yeah, I guess, I suppose it's worth saying that for a large part of my working life, I didn't have a purpose. It sounds very grand, doesn't it? I have a purpose. And I know with the work of Simon Sinek talking about find the why in terms of organisations, it's very on trend, but actually there's something quite fundamental around. And I wish I'd known this years ago when I was at university, even before university, to try and help figure out what it was I wanted to do. And actually, if you can find your why, it makes such a difference to your working life, because life's too short to be miserable at work, right? That's not to say I wasn't miserable in what I did before, but definitely once you find that thing that makes my heart sing is how I describe it, it makes all the difference.
Definitely. Like you say, life is short. So why wouldn't we? Why would we not live life with absolute purpose?
Yeah.
So yeah, I love that. So shall we start with, and I know this is a big a big passion of yours as well as mine is around like what coaching actually is and like proper coaching, and there's a lot of, I'm just going to like signpost this here, there's a lot of people out there calling themselves coaches who aren't actually coaches. So let's talk about what is coaching, Sam. What does it mean to you and why does it matter? What do you want to share today?
So I think for me, coaching is about change. And I know when you think through the word change, you can think of it in terms of big changes like, moving house, getting divorced, getting a new job, organizational change. But actually, coaching at the heart of it is about individuals finding out what it is they want to do differently, better, more of, less of, whether that be an internal thing around how they think about things, how they see things, or an external thing around making a physical change in their life. And as a coach, and you made the point about there's lots of people out there with the label coach, and you and I have both spent a lot of time and energy in accrediting ourselves with qualifications in coaching and learning the skills and tools and techniques. With that set of skills, it's about partnering with the person that you're working with to help them figure out what it is that they want and need. So you're not telling them, you're supporting them in a way using tools and techniques so they can figure that out for themselves. So it's at its best, it's mind-blowing what people can achieve. So yeah.
Completely agree. It is mind-blowing. And I have, as you were saying it, I was like, yeah, divorced, done that one, moved house, yeah, done that one, left my corporate job, yeah, I did that one. So yeah, Sam was like saying all the changes and powers of coaching. I'm like, yeah, that was me. Yeah, it's really powerful. And I think like that label coach as well, there's, just to like distinguish that, there's absolutely a place for advice giving, mentoring and everything else, but coaching is so powerful in its own right for the specific elements that it's for. So sorry, you're going to say something?
Yeah, I think I first came across coaching when I was in my early 30s, and I was days before Amazon, I was in a bookshop, and actually I bought this book, and it's called Be Your Own Life Coach by Fiona Harold.
Oh wow.
And it was 2001, so that's how long ago we're talking, and I read this book, and I guess this book was the beginning of the universe starting to tell me something that I might maybe want to do something differently, but I wasn't aware at that point that maybe this was the thing. And I read the book, really enjoyed it, because at that point I didn't read non-fiction books, because this is a non-fiction book. And life coaching was quite popular, but it had a stigma attached as being a little bit airy-fairy, and I had no exposure of it in the world of work at all. So I worked in a bank at that point, and no one coached me. I was not given any coaching skills as a leader of people. And about 5 years on from that, in a different company, I was sent on a leadership course, Gemma, and they talked about coaching. And I was really shocked that there was more than one way to lead people, and that you didn't just tell people what to do anymore. Saying that now sounds ridiculous, knowing all the things I now know. But I really know what it's like being a leader when you are first introduced to coaching. And it's a bit of a rude awakening and a bit of a habit break to get out of that mindset of, you just need to do this.
Yeah.
So for me, coaching has got lots of different facets to it around how it can support. And I think actually in the workplace, it can be transformational as much as it can in your home life.
Definitely can be transformational. So coming on to that, Sam, do you want to talk a little bit about your story, really? Like what led you into your journey into coaching? So you said you went into this bookshop, you picked up the book, you knew there was some kind of nudge going on there for you, you had those feelings, it was your first non-fiction book. I love that. It's just definitely a good sign. So then what happened from there on? How did this
I guess
journey progress?
Yeah, so I suppose I wasn't ready to hear what the universe was trying to tell me at that point, and so I was very much into my career in marketing. And fast forward a number of years, I had a period of ill health at the end of my 30s into my early 40s. I actually had chronic fatigue syndrome, or ME, depending on which label you want to give. And I had 3 years where I had some time off work, and then I worked part-time, and life was pretty miserable. I was told to live half a life by the hospital, which is always a great phrase. How do you know what's half a life? How do you know what half your energy level is? You're not a battery, you don't have a little gauge. Anyway, I digress. So that, coming out the other side of that, and thank goodness I recovered, and I'm so thankful that I got my health back. When I went back into the world of work again, I had a real sense of dissatisfaction that I knew I couldn't carry on doing what I was doing. But I had no idea how to figure out what to change and how to change. And it took me another couple of years, another probably 2 years, 3 years. And then a colleague said, oh, I'm going, because we'd been talking about the fact we were both a bit fed up with our jobs. Pardon me. And my colleague said, I've got tickets to this workshop. It's on a Sunday in London, in Hatton Garden, and it's called Reinvent Yourself, which is a very grand, like you're going to go through some doors and come out a different person.
Like stars in their eyes.
Yes, exactly. Tonight, Matthew, I'm going to be something else. But actually, to be fair, it was led by a coach, and her name was Dr. Samantha Collins. And that session, it was a day workshop. And that session on its own started to give me some tools to figure some things out. But it was by no means the answer to my sort of problem. But I then had a period of 6 months where I started to fully think about what I really wanted to do. And actually, another book that you and I know you were a big fan of, The World of Strengths as well. I started to think about what I'm good at, because I'd never thought of it in that way before. And through that, I realised, after discounting being a dog trainer, not that I have a dog, but I love dogs. And the other thing I looked at was maybe being like I'd had my colours done, like Colour Me Beautiful.
Oh, yeah.
And I thought about, can I do that? And then for various different reasons, I discounted both of those two things. But I realised they had one thing in common, and that was about helping people to sort of help themselves. So you give them some support. With a dog trainer, they kind of give you some guidance around what to do with the dog. It's about how they communicate with each other, isn't it? And I had a team of people working for me in my day job. And I realised the bit I loved the most was developing them. So I thought, it's coaching. And as a result of that, I then did my first coaching book. qualification, which I self-funded, and I was still in my old job doing customer experience stuff. But because I loved it so much, I'd just talk about it naturally. And I did some things in the business unit I was part of. And in my past, when I worked in marketing, I was never brave enough to push myself forward because I wasn't really, my heart wasn't in it. Whereas with this, it wasn't about, oh, look at me, how do you do coaching? It was actually, I had a real sense of purpose, it's that phrase again.
Yeah.
I really wanted to make a difference and make a change. So it didn't feel disingenuous around, hey, give me a promotion, I'm great. It was more around, I think this organisation could really benefit from this. How can I help and support? Which has got a very different intent.
So it sounds really aligned to your strengths there, Sam. Like you've got an awareness of like that purpose and that mission, like, and that gave you energy. And you also saw, hang on a minute, not only am I good at this and I love this, but this is going to benefit the organization. And that mirrors my story very much as well, almost like, hang on. And then it became like bigger than me. That's what I'm getting that sense from you. It became bigger than you. And it was almost like, okay, this isn't about being brave anymore. Like, this is now bigger than me. So I have to continue this path. That's what I'm hearing.
Absolutely. And I think our stories are very similar. And I guess one of the things that I'm really proud of in my career, when I was in that last organisation, well, where I trained to become a coach, was in Aviva, was I helped set up the global coaching faculty. Obviously, you were one of the coaches that came in to be trained. There were, I think it's 60 odd of us in the first round, and it ended up being about 120 at the time I left. So just helping people, putting coaching into the business, just amazing, to have all those people wanting to support people to be the best they can be.
And how did so what I'm hearing there is that mission, that purpose, and it was absolutely amazing what you did at Aviva, just to call that out, like the transformation of that whole program, and the impact. So also that impact that had on me personally, because we went through that so experientially as well. Like the amount of coaching that we received and gave, like that in itself was life transformative, wasn't it? So can you tell me more about, and for those listening, like what have been I've heard about like the impacts that on like coaching with like your mission and purpose, but what about you personally? So you were in this place where the hospital was telling you to live half a life. Like, what a crazy thing to say. Why would you not tell someone to live a full life, but just take care of their energy? And so how did you go from there to flourishing? How did coaching help you along that journey?
So there was the initial workshop, which obviously I mentioned. And then I did my first coaching qualification. I learned some, and that was quite different to the training that you and I went through. It was remote learning. It was mainly me coaching somebody, then doing reflection notes. So nobody was observing what I was doing. There was some reading, but it was a light touch, I think, in comparison to the ICF, International Coaching Federation training that we both received subsequently to that. And then going back to Dr. Sam Collins, I then went back to her and had a couple of one-to-one coaching sessions with her. And that prompted me on again to, I want to do this. I want to start my business. But I think at that point, I still wasn't ready. And actually I came up with a vision board. I had a vision board, and then we've talked about vision boards in the past. And that vision board had sort of 3 elements to it, and there was a plan attached. And that was, I want to do something about coaching in Aviva. Then I want to leave Aviva. So this was in 2013, and I knew my target was to leave Aviva in 2018. And I left Aviva in 2018. So I knew I couldn't stay there for the rest of it. I knew I needed to leave, much as I've got a lot of experience and value out of having worked there. And I guess working with Sam as a coach, that helped me start to kind of build on that vision board and think really carefully around what I wanted to do and how I wanted to do it. Now, I could have there and then, after my first qualification, gone out and called myself a coach. But to your point of earlier, I didn't feel ready. And now knowing what I know, and I'm still by no means, the thing I love about coaching is every day is a school day, and there's so much more to learn. But I know so much more now than I did then, and I just didn't feel ready to go out into the world and go, hi, I'm self-employed, I'm a coach, here, can I have some coaching? So doing what I did in Aviva was a first step, almost to prove to myself and to give myself some credibility. And then I left Aviva, and then I've been at a company called Jones Lang LaSalle, JLL, for the last 3 and a bit years. And I was doing a mixture of things there, some of which was coaching. And since last August, I've worked there part-time purely as a coach, and then I've got my own coaching business. So I'm now developing and growing that. So I'm now a full-time professional coach.
Yeah.
So, which was the final part of that plan. And I now realise I need probably a new vision board, a new plan to take me forward in terms of where I go next with my coaching. So yeah, so coaching from Sam, and then being part of the coaching faculty and having that coaching support and coach mentoring and being coached by colleagues who wanted to practice. I mean, coaching becomes part of your life, not just you giving coaching, but you receiving coaching as well. And it makes such a difference, such a difference.
It really does. So powerful. And what I love from your story, and I feel like there's some gifts in here. So this is just my intuition is starting to just tap at me here and just go, there's something in this we need to just pull out here, which is around the gift of, I don't know how we put it into words, like the consideration, the kind of knowing that it was your purpose and journey, taking action. So I'm just putting myself in the shoes of someone listening who wants to be a coach, right? So you knew it was your purpose and journey, you took action. And by the way, just a side point, is Sam Collins the lady who ran a workshop when we were in the Women's Network, and she had a picture of her husband on a vision board?
Yes.
That's the lady. Yeah, thought so.
Aspire. She was the Aspire Foundation.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. So yeah, so what I'm hearing is like a very considered approach here. You did ICF, you took action, you got coaching yourself, you did ICF, very considered approach. You've made some differences in some organizations, you've planned, you've been coached yourself through that process, and like you've been like really ready and considered. Sort of that's the feeling I'm getting, is like very considered. Okay. If you compare that to like what would be the gift in that? Because we know that there's a lot of people out there calling themselves coaches. Like, I've done this like $7 course and now I'm a coach, or I'm going to teach you this thing, but I'm going to call you a coach. So there's almost like the polarity. So you've got the like, and I'm talking with my hands for those that listen to the audio, sorry, but you've got over here like the really, the considered Sam who's done the ICF, who's really taken the time, become a proper coach, and has built everything up from a real integrity. That's the word I'm looking for, place of integrity. And then over here you've got the overnight $7 coach,
the weekend course on coaching. I'm a coach.
Yeah. And I'm not saying this side is on their own journey, and I'm not judging that side, but I'm just saying there is a polarity here. So what would you say the gifts would be? So for somebody listening who is thinking, yes, like I want to be a coach, but I'm hearing this integrity from Sam, and I really want to do things the right way, and I want to develop to be the best coach I can be, right? Because this is what it's all about. It's about being the best version of ourselves that we can be, and having that integrity behind us. So what would you say to anyone listening that's thinking, I really want to be a coach, but do I go over here and do I do ICF, or do I go do the $7 course? What would you say to those listening?
I guess knowing what I know now, the difference is most coaching conversations are a safe space for somebody to do some self-development and some work with support from somebody. And that's all well and good, and everyone has a great conversation and it's useful. But in my experience now, and I've been doing this for over 8 years, there are times you come across people in coaching conversations who reveal things about themselves where they might be struggling with mental health issues. I've had conversations with somebody who's feeling suicidal. And I guess without having had some form of more formal training, knowing how to respond and react in those types of situations. And don't get me wrong, that's a really difficult situation for anybody, even if you were a trained mental health professional, and you work for Samaritans, hearing somebody who's in a bad place is hard to hear. But I guess what I've had as a result of that training is knowing where my boundaries lie around what I can do and what I can't do to support people. And I think there's a concern around when you come across those types of situations of knowing when to say. And I have turned somebody away from coaching before because they've come to me for support, and it's become quite clear that probably therapy is what they need rather than coaching. And the reason why the differential is coaching is based on the premise that the person is whole and well and is able to resolve their own problems. And in my past, when I was ill, I had problems around feeling depressed. I had ME, God. So I recognised that when I've had problems with my mental health in the past, your axes of how you see things is on a slightly different sort of angle. And being able to pick up on some of those things and recognise that actually maybe coaching might not be the right thing to help somebody is really important. And I'm not sure, and I don't know because I've not done a $7 weekend course on coaching, but my sense would be that you could get yourself into a bit of a pickle, a mess, if you decided to want to go there, in terms of how you handle that.
Yeah, that's a really good.
I've gone to the dark side, and I feel like that with the energy level. But equally, there are other things around. Very early on, recognizing who you are as a person, my natural driver and sort of is around wanting to rescue people, to make people feel well again. And through my coaching training, I've learned to recognize when I'm doing that and how to deal with it and how to then coach so I'm not becoming a rescuer. And again, my sense would be, without some of that self-development, part of the coach training is actually understanding what you bring into the conversation as much as what the coachee brings to the conversation and how you self-manage. Otherwise you get into, well, Gemma, you should do that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think that's so powerful. And I think that is, as somebody who was also like the rescuer, that becomes so powerful through that realization. And I think it comes back to, doesn't it, that the client is resourceful and whole. Like that, I come back to that almost daily sometimes. I've worked with clients who've like had this like sudden freak out moment or something, and I think, oh no, like what have I done? I'm not doing enough for them. And I can see myself going into that mode. But as soon as you come back to they're resourceful and whole, and for recovering people pleasers, that can feel really hard, like holding that space and being like, no, like they know what they're doing. I just need to hold a little more space for them, and they're just gonna flip. Or maybe it's a bit more challenge today, maybe it's a little bit more support today. And getting that balance right is just like, that is the magic of coaching, isn't it? And almost taking our ego out of it and the responsibility out of it. So for anyone listening who is a coach, whether you're ICF trained or not, like, I think that statement, your client is resourceful and whole, like, can just transform so much. But as a lot of our listeners are HSP and empaths and recovering people pleasers, and sometimes that can be really hard because we're so used to jumping in and fixing, aren't we? Is there any more you want to say on that, Sam?
Yeah, I guess one of the things, part of the thing that appealed to me of coaching is that I felt I had some natural strengths that I could bring to the party. By no means so all of my strengths played to that, and I've definitely had to learn some things and self-manage on some things. And I, like you, have definitely got that empathetic nature, and I really feel physical sensations when I coach people. Like my stomach goes off on one. I'm having conversations. It's like a radar almost. It's bizarre. But yeah, so I think for me there is something around tuning in to what's going on, and both as a coach, but also when you're being coached. I don't think we spend enough time thinking about what is what is our sort of instincts. And the world of business is all about thought and logic, which I get, but actually instinct and gut feel still has a part to play. We all love data, don't we? So sometimes I think that side of things, that intuition bit, gets switched off when actually it's trying to tell you something, which is not necessarily picking up on what it is it's trying to tell us.
You said the word data there. That's actually been something that's been really, few conversations I've had actually the last few weeks have been like what your body is telling you is data, like emotional data. So you can almost go, what is a conversation I had the other week was, what's your data about this over the last few weeks? And it was a situation where something that someone was doing that they didn't feel like was in alignment for them. So I was like, well, tell me what the data suggests. And it was like, oh, well, when I do these things, my body does, oh, actually. So it's like, yeah, that becomes the data, the emotional data. So yeah, that's a really great point.
And actually, since I've been coaching full time, I used to get really bad neck and shoulder. I mean, I do sports massage every month anyway, just from a wellness perspective, but I used to spend a lot of time on my shoulders. And since I've stopped doing that other stuff and now I just coach, my shoulders have been 100% better because I'm not doing that anymore.
So emotional alignment causes physical alignment, doesn't it?
Yeah. There's definitely something there on that.
There is. I love that. Okay, I'm just checking my notes to see if there's anything else that we wanted to talk about today. Is there anything else you want to share, Sam? Any advice for anyone listening?
Coaches give advice, Gemma. I guess one of the things that I was thinking about in advance of this is about why does coaching matter? Because it's one of those things that my sense of it is that people either get it or they either don't know about it or they're just not sure what it's all about. And because the word coach is used in different guises, you've got agile coaches in the world of business who are about making kind of IT change happen. You've got sports coaches. So for me, I think it's around to help and shift mindsets. I saw, I was very lucky in 2018. I went on holiday to Singapore and we went to a museum and it was an art exhibition. I don't normally go to them, but I do quite like an art exhibition, but I don't tend to go to them apart from when I'm on holiday. And in the lift, there was this poster and it said, what you see is what you see. And it's a quote by an American artist. His name's Frank Stella, and he's a minimalist artist. And Google him, for those who are interested. The art at that exhibition was amazing. And actually, I love that quote, what you see is what you see, because the essence, on face value, the sky is blue, the grass is green, but actually what you see is what you see. If you choose to see things in a certain way, then you'll choose to see things and you'll look for things to reinforce it. And what I love about coaching is that it challenges that and it helps you take on a different perspective and a different view of the world in a way that I think for a long time I didn't challenge myself and my thoughts. I talk because I thought something meant it was true. And I remember somebody saying to me quite a while ago, you are not your thoughts. And I think, not my thoughts. But actually, just because you've thought something doesn't make it true, doesn't mean that that's who you are. So often we get so caught up in our minds, and that's where the power of coaching comes in, to help unpick generalizations, assumptions, blind spots, all the things that on our own we can't necessarily unpick for ourselves.
I can vouch for that as a coachee as well as a coach. I think that's been an amazing kind of transformational part of my journey as well. And do you remember that day, Sam? I was thinking about this morning. It popped into my mind. I can't think what was in relation to, but I remember there was a day I was running a workshop on mindfulness and you put your Apple Watch on me and my heart rate was at 90. And I was suddenly like, oh my God, I'm running this workshop on mindfulness and my heart rate is at 90. And that was when I was going through, like, even though I was like trying to help people with their mental health at the time, I was going through huge amounts of anxiety. And what was actually happening, it was through coaching that these beliefs got challenged. because I thought I needed to, I was in people pleaser mode, and I was I was doing this well-being role, and I was doing this leadership role, and it was only through coaching that I had the awareness that it was okay for me to do a good job and take care of myself, rather than do a great job and be like completely and utterly burnt out. And through the support of the coaching that I had, and I was running my business on the side at the time, I experimented with that. And in my mind, I was a complete asshole because I started to say no to things. And I would say I'm not going to work in London today because it's overwhelming me and I can't do it. And I'm going to work in London every other week. And I started to put all these boundaries in place. And the coaching gave me the opportunity to explore those thought processes around actually what was true. Like you say, is the sky really blue? And I ended up getting I can remember one day my boss giving me we had that time where we had these special bonuses, didn't we? And I remember being given this special little bonus for doing such a great job, and I was so shocked because I was like, but I've been giving less. And so coaching really helped me step into that space of actually what's the truth here. And actually the truth was, when I took care of myself and showed up from that space and had boundaries and said no, actually I was then rewarded for that. So yeah, coaching really helped me through that experience, and that ultimately led to me setting enough boundaries to have that day for my business, to then go part-time, to then eventually leave the organization and run my business full time. So yeah, coaching has been super powerful for that challenging of beliefs. So I really love that you said that, because I was like, yes, that's it.
And then there's another quote that I found yesterday that I love, which I'm not one normally for philosophy, but it's from Plato. He wrote, "Reality is created by the mind. We can change our reality by changing our mind."
Yeah.
And at its essence, I think coaching can really support that process of changing our perspective and our point of view. And I had a client come to me desperate for the next level of promotion, and really frustrated, so frustrated that they weren't there, and almost to the point they were a bit belligerent about it, in terms of thinking, it's that's my job, I deserve it, give it to me. A real sense of anger and frustration. And it became quite clear early on in the coaching conversations that they spent so long focusing on what they wanted, hadn't really thought about how they were going to get there.
Yeah.
And I guess by shifting that focus from the what into the how, really helped them think about what they might need to do differently. And lo and behold, 3.5 months later, they got promoted. And almost became not a different person, but they have become they've done really well for themselves since, because they're living what they do, and they've got the freedom to do things the way they want to do them. And a lot of that frustration was born on the fact they felt stuck in that old job. So I mean, that's the power of coaching, isn't it?
It is, absolutely. And it starts to have these ripple effects. So they're then going to be different with those around them, and that then has a ripple effect. And people still come back to me and say, oh, I remember you said this, you asked me this question, and I was just like, oh, and then this happened and this happened, and you just hear about those ripples. It's absolutely amazing.
And do you know what, somebody approached me a couple of weeks ago who I met when I first moved to Norfolk X number of years ago. It must be 19 years this year. And they said something to me. They said, oh yeah, do you remember? She said, when I first met you, this would have been 2003, 2004, you said this thing. And I was thinking, I don't remember saying that. It had a real profound effect on me. I was like, okay, great, lovely. But it's amazing just how the power of having conversations with people, the impact that, the positive impact you can have on helping support people. And that's why I love it. I mean, for me, I've changed my career. I feel like I've got a sense of, I have got a sense of purpose. I know what I'm doing. It completely still pushes me. It's given me strength to learn, because I left university thinking I never want to learn ever again. I'm so over that. And I've done probably over 150 hours of learning in the last 8 years. I'm sure you've done more, because I know you did your positive psychology course. it's given me the strength to start a new career, because how many people do that? And it's enabled me to play to my strengths as well. So, I owe a lot to being coached and learning to coach, because I think the two things hand in hand have been transformational.
Definitely. I completely agree. So we've come to the end of today's podcast, Sam, and I always ask my guests, as this is the Authentically You podcast, I know we've talked a lot about authenticity and purpose and things, but if you were to just say one thing, like one tip off the top of your head that would that you would say to help people connect to their most authentic selves, what would it be?
Play to your strengths, identify them, and use them.
Amazing.
Because we don't spend enough time thinking about what we're good at. We beat ourselves up on what we're feeling adequate about.
Yeah, we do. I love that. And I think that will resonate with a lot of listeners, who've got sensitive superpowers, but feel like they are maybe a bit of a burden. So if we want to know more about you, Sam, how can we get in touch with you? I'll pop your details in the show notes, but is there anything you'd like to share?
Yeah, so I've got a website, www.samhowellcoaching.com. You can find me on LinkedIn and Sam Howell Coaching, and I think you'll see the LinkedIn profile on the podcast details. And you can email me. I'm sam@samhowellcoaching.com. So, yeah.
Thank you so much, Sam. Thank you for being a guest today. It's been amazing to talk about, one of my topics I'm very passionate about. And and thank you to you and your grandfather clock for making an appearance on the video version of our podcast today.
The grandfather clock did it all, Gemma.
Yeah, brilliant. All right, we'll leave it there then. Thanks, Sam.
Thank you.